I've been a ranger in the Rocky Mountains for 17 years. I've dealt with lost hikers, bear encounters, illegal camps, you name it. But nothing, and I mean nothing, comes close to what happened in 2019. It's the only incident that still makes my stomach drop when I think about it. This won't be a paranormal story. What I saw, what I found, it was human. That's what makes it worse. It started like most bad stories do, with a missing person. A woman named Claire Henson, 27, was hiking alone near a lesser-used trail on the northern ridge. She texted her sister that morning saying the trail was quiet, too quiet, and that she felt like she was being watched. That was the last anyone heard from her. Her car was still at the trailhead, 4 hours overdue, then 8, then 13. By the next morning, we officially had a missing hiker. I was assigned to sweep a section of old forestry road that branched off from her planned route. 99% of the time, missing hikers follow predictable patterns. But not Claire. She disappeared like she stepped off the earth. On day 2 of the search, I found a campsite. Not hers. This one was hidden. Too well hidden. About a half-mile off trail, tucked behind a wall of dead-fallen undergrowth. It looked lived in. Recently, there was a half-burnt fire pit, 2 soiled blankets, a pile of instant noodle wrappers, a tarp roof tied low to keep it unseen, and this strange smell, like sweat and rotting food. But something was off. There were 3 separate sets of footprints around the area, all different sizes. One looked small, almost like a teenager's or a petite woman's. The smallest set caught my attention immediately. Barefoot, human. Barefoot. In the Rockies. In October. I radioed the team. They told me to back out and wait. We didn't know if the people who stayed there could be dangerous. But before I left, I noticed something half buried behind the tarp. A scrap of bright blue fabric. Claire's jacket had been bright blue. That night, the search was paused due to incoming storms. Lightning was hitting the ridges too often for us to stay out there. I remained at a small ranger outpost cabin, just 3 miles from where I'd found the campsite. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard whistling. High-pitched, short, 2 notes, then silence. A pattern. At first I figured it was wind through the cracks, but it repeated, and repeated again, closer. I stepped outside with my flashlight. Nothing but dark trees and fog. Then the whistle came from behind the cabin. I swung around fast, light scanning the tree line, and for a split second, I saw a figure. Thin, short, standing behind a ponderosa pine. Watching. But when I aimed the flashlight fully, it was gone. Footsteps crunched away into the dark. I told myself it was an animal or my lack of sleep, but deep down I knew those were human footsteps and someone had been standing 10 feet from my cabin. The next morning, the storm passed and we resumed the search. We focused around the hidden campsite. About 100 yards downhill, we found something none of us expected. A shallow pit in the ground, freshly dug, the size of a bathtub. One of the deputies muttered, "This looks like a grave." But inside was nothing, just disturbed soil and a broken shovel handle. But what made all of us uneasy was the set of bare footprints around the pit, the same size as the ones near the campsite. Small, human, bare. The prints led into the thick brush heading north. We followed them. They led us to a narrow ravine where a cluster of boulders created a natural overhang. Except it wasn't natural anymore. Someone had dug into the hillside to expand the space, creating a crude tunnel-like shelter about 3 feet high. Inside, we found empty water jugs, old blankets, a knife stuck into a log, strings of animal bones hanging like wind chimes, and in the far back, a disposable phone. The phone had one video saved on it. When we hit play, the screen showed a grainy image of a woman sitting in the dark, crying, whispering, "Please, please just let me go." It was Claire. We immediately radioed for backup. This was no longer a search. It was a recovery or a rescue, depending on how fast we moved. But then one of the deputies found something else carved into the dirt wall. The letters were jagged, rushed, like someone wrote them moments before running. "Don't follow me." We spread out carefully, weapons ready. My job was to circle around the ravine and check the ridge above for movement. Halfway up the slope, I heard whispering. At first it sounded like a radio left on low volume, but my radio was silent. The whispering continued. 2 voices, one frantic, one calm. I crouched behind a tree, heart pounding, and listened. "She's not ready." Then silence. Every hair on my neck rose. I stepped forward carefully and snapped a twig. The whispering stopped instantly, followed by the unmistakable sound of feet running through brush. I chased the sound, yelling for them to stop, but whoever it was moved fast, faster than any normal hiker. They disappeared into a maze of pines and rock slabs, but I did see one thing just before they vanished. A bare foot, coated in mud, gripping a rock as the figure climbed out of sight. 10 minutes later, another ranger radioed that they'd found her. Claire. She was alive, barely, hidden behind a fallen tree, huddled under a ripped sleeping bag, shaking uncontrollably. She kept saying, "They're still here, they're watching us." She had bruises on her wrists, dirt under her nails, and she was missing her shoes. She kept repeating one word. "They." Not he, not him, they. We evacuated her immediately by helicopter, but the story wasn't over. A search team swept the entire area for 3 days after we found Claire. We discovered evidence of multiple people living out there. There were 3 separate campsites with food caches, stashes of clothes, a rusted hatchet, a half-burnt notebook filled with incoherent phrases, and dozens of barefoot footprints. But we never found the individuals themselves. Not one. They vanished deeper into the Rockies like ghosts. The sheriff later told me, quietly, that the region had long been rumored to harbor a group of squatters, people who chose to live off-grid, far from society, hostile to anyone who invaded their territory. We suspect Claire crossed into their area, and they didn't want her to leave. Even today, sometimes hikers report strange things. Whistling, bones hanging from trees, low voices carrying through the canyons, and sometimes bare footprints where there shouldn't be any. But here's what keeps me up. 3 months after Claire was rescued, I returned to check the old campsite area. Right at the tree line, just outside the ravine, I found a fresh, small, bare human footprint, and next to it, scratched into the dirt, "We remember you." I stopped going out alone after that, because some people don't want to be found, and some people don't want to let go.